So next over to Jude. And Jude, so post-marketing surveillance is one of the responsibilities of a regulatory authority that is both expensive and difficult to share among neighbors. Can you talk about the role of donor groups in supporting surveillance of drug quality and this post-market surveillance? The point was made yesterday that we can't test quality in, but we certainly can track what happens once products get out there and help to separate real products from fakes. So, Jude, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jono. And thank you to the to the committee for inviting me. I think this is a very interesting topic and one that is it's necessary to dwell on it a little bit more so that we all are getting a good sense of areas for improvement. I think one of the things that was of interest to me is to recollect that in the 2012 IOM report, post-marketing surveillance was called out as an area. I think the committee recommended then the need to strengthen technical support for post-marketing surveillance. And then looking at what I saw as the mandate of the committee this time around, correct me if I'm wrong, it says to discuss the transition of donor aid and the capacity of regulatory systems to ensure the safety and quality of regulated products, the lack of post-marketing surveillance in many countries, and challenges of regulating the informal medicines market. So I think it's really good that the committee is recognizing this importance, and I would like to dwell on this in several ways, but first off is to really say that this is consistent with what we hear from other donors, primarily USAID, and I will make a brief intro on the link we have with USAID in this sense. But I think the very first thing to say is it's really very important that even when we talk about regulatory agencies, that we simplify things to what truly are we talking about in terms of mandates and their role. And that is essentially having a health authority that have the capability to protect, to promote access, particularly to essential medicines, and protect the population from harm. It seems to me that that's the totality of the mandate of health authorities that are, that are expected to regulate pharmaceuticals or medical products. So that second part of it on protecting the population from harm is one that very much is connected with post-marketing surveillance and maybe medicine quality monitoring specifically. And so we've had a very long journey about this. When I was reflecting on how best to communicate this, I felt it would be of interest to talk about lessons that we've learned. It was early in 1992 that USAID reached out to USP to say, well, you're a 200-year organization, at least we're going to be by 2020, that have been working in medicine quality from the early years when poor quality products were coming to the US from the UK, from Britain. So this is something you do. So how can you help us as an agency to address this? And so we've been working in this in several iterations of that, primarily domestically here in the US, but the monographs, the public standards that we develop are used or recognized in up to 45 countries in the world and used extensively. But it was only until early in 2000s that we started really doing medicine quality surveillance related activities. And I think that started off from Southeast Asia. So the experiences to communicate here is really about 15 years experience in medicine quality surveillance. What are the lessons that we've learned? We also, because we've had the mandate to support beyond that, we've been working closely with manufacturers to build their capacity to produce quality assured priority essential medicines to support treatment programs that USAID is interested in. By the way, the Promoting the Quality of Medicines program that I lead is funded by the United States Agency for International Development, started off in 2009, this particular iteration. But like I said, we had been collaborating with USAID since 1992. So the earlier effort at medicine quality surveillance really taught us a lot of lessons. And some of those are really things that will be very much of interest to put out in public domain. So we've written a lot about this. I'll communicate some of them to the community here right now, but we'll follow up subsequently with documentations if you're interested. We've learned that medicines quality monitoring surveys help to reveal systemic weaknesses in quality assurance and procurement systems. Typically, when they are done well, they reveal systemic deficiencies. Because then you're able to find out, how porous is the borders? What kind of products are in the market? Are they even products approved, registered? Are there products registered in other countries? Even before you go on to even test anything, there is a lot that you can find from just sampling the products, before subjecting them to testing. And we will talk about different layers of those testing. So we've learned that that these surveys can provide valuable information and act as a catalyst for interventions to strengthen quality assurance systems. So for a large extent, at the very beginning, it became almost like a diagnostic tool for us. That once you do such surveys, you're able to find out, maybe their issue is that there isn't a national medicines register. People don't even know what needs to be in the market. Or there is a porous border and medicines that are coming in are not known from where they are coming in. Or, there are tons of informal sellers, informal markets, illicit drug dealers and all that. So these are some of the things that you can quickly get before you even get to the point of testing. However, like I mentioned, these surveys have to be well planned. Much earlier, part of what's going on is that you have researchers, scientists, funded not primarily from Europe, from the US. They jet into these countries, stay very close to the five-star hotel in the capital city, and very conveniently sample some shops for products and test them. And at times, it might even have sampling purposefully for areas where there might be a lot of issues, right? So you have either very low recognition of the burden of poor quality, or you have exaggerated recognition. And at times, even the countries begin to doubt these findings. The regulatory agencies are at times not informed. The protocols are not endorsed, reviewed. So you have a lot of issues, and typically they don't enable use of such data for local regulatory action. So these are some of the challenges. So if they are not well planned, they could be a disservice to the local agency. We've learned that donor-funded medicine quality surveys, including ours, and like the speaker much earlier talking about food, we have to also be very, very frank with ourselves if we have to move this sector forward. Medicines, donor-funded medicine surveys may encourage dependence. They may be vertical, they may be siloed. We have to be watchful for that. They may actually lead countries to become very dependent, thinking that this is a regulatory function that others have to do for them. We've learned that surveillance should be continuous. In any event, it's taken from its name. You have to really, it has to be active and continuous. And where that happens, you begin to see, particularly if it's very well designed, you are really, casting the net very widely. You are taking into consideration certain variables that will enable you to have a sense of the burden of the poor quality medicines in the country. When you do that very well, over time, as you're surveying as you are conducting these surveys on a specific product, you begin to see gradual drop. And we saw that with anti-malarials. The challenge we had at some point is that, our sentinel sites, more than 200 sentinel sites we'll be supporting in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and parts of Latin America, remain the same sentinel sites in specific regions, and the bad actors know that. So at times, they move their trade to elsewhere. So we have to recognize the place of geography and those that are playing in this field and how to really factor in their practices into designing these surveys. And then we've learned that you need to leverage safety and quality surveillance. Not every country has the kind of resources. And in fact, even the resources we have here in the US is finite. It's not limitless. So we have to get to the point where if there are opportunities to coordinate and consolidate in the same platform, safety surveillance and quality surveillance. We have to take advantage of that. And most importantly, we learned, and just as Lembut was mentioning yesterday, I was very excited he brought up that point. Risk-based approach is the only way to build sustainability, to get on this journey of enabling the countries to become self-reliant. And before you can get to that risk-based approach, there are several other things you have to think about. You have to even ask the question, what is the burden of the problem? What are the likelihood and severity of harm? And with which products? Once you define all that, then you can purposefully allocate the limited resources that these countries have. So we've articulated some of these ideas in a document we produced recently called Risk-Based Post-Marketing Surveillance Implementation Guide for Countries. We will be more than happy to share it with the committee. But I think what it helps countries to do, in addition to all the numerous and seminal guidelines that WHO has provided, this is really to take it a notch lower to the actual direct implementation, to help countries to really be able to ask those questions, to begin to find out what are the issues that are, becoming a problem, why the burden of poor quality medicines continue to threaten their population. But before I end up in this particular question, I want to really also bring attention that some of the things that we've learned in supporting manufacturers, in supporting regulatory authorities, inspectorates, that are very relevant to this. So you begin to see that more often than not, most of the low and middle income countries conduct GMP inspection because maybe their regulation says that they should. Just very much like why they do sampling and testing of products right now, right? So they're trying to meet a regulatory mandate. But really thinking about efficiency about that is now beginning to be a reality because the countries that recognize it themselves and donors are saying, well, we're not there forever. And so these forces are coming together. So when you get into the experiences from GMP inspection, you find that countries really are continuously relying on themselves to do those inspections, generate their own data, and then take decisions. But where the problem is beyond capacity, is also the fact that there isn't an effort to build that data over time and begin to understand, is there a pattern of compliance issues with these manufacturers? And if there is a pattern, what has it got to do with? Is it capability in putting together the CMC dossier? Is it for the manufacturer with stability studies? Is it for comparative dissolution testing? Is it bioequivalence testing? So we have to get to the point where we understand what the challenges are. And if we get to the point where getting the manufacturers to put down some metrics in place to show, even when inspection is not happening, that they are putting down data, that will help in guiding regulatory authorities in building some trust and confidence in specific manufacturers and therefore reducing the speed of sampling and testing their products. So there's an initiative even here in the US by US FDA talking about quality metrics. Right. So some of these ideas, as they are emerging from more mature and resourced agencies, we need to begin to think about it with very resource-constrained agencies. So having a way to think about quality metrics is one. Having a way to rely on data. WHO generates a lot of data on compliance of these agencies, on the work that they are doing. And most of these information are publicly available. The WHO PAIR, the WHO PAIR, the public assessment reports, the public inspection reports. I personally believe that information is probably the next big thing after efficacy in regulation. I said it previously, and I'm not sure how best to articulate what I really mean with that. But you really see that we have, information is a global public good. You have data, information that WHO is pushing out. You have, in terms of compliance with manufacturing, you have the WHO notice of concern and suspension. You have FDA warning letters. You have 483s. You have tons of information. And if manufacturers understand that when they have an issue with one jurisdiction, it means they're going to likely is going to be known by other jurisdictions, they will begin to change their practices. So these all will connect back to really the kind of donor investment that may be needed in post-marketing surveillance.
Great. Okay. And it would be good. Thank you for that. And